What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles submitted to the channel by the Karen's Claw, who's running a full Hisuian team, but in the Open Ultra League rather than in the Hisui Cup. Now in this submission they mentioned not really being a fan of most limited metas, but thought it'd be a cool concept to bring a Hisui team to the Ultra League where one of my favourite Pokemon from the Hisui region, Enamorus, can also be used. Now before we get into the question of the day, I want to give a quick shout out to both Giorgio Ardito and Jakey Park for their donations and gifted memberships in yesterday's live stream. As always, it is very much appreciated. And with that being said, let's get into the question of the day. Now, this was a question of the day submitted by the Karen's Claw, and it's actually a really cool one that I've not really thought of before. But which Pokemon is typically your nemesis when building a fun team comp? So probably a Pokemon that core breaks a lot of teams that you put together, which you can't really cover for when you are building sort of more fun style teams rather than anti-meta or meta picks. Let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I'm starting into the first battle, leading Enamorus into Virizion, so this is pretty much the dream lead for us. I think, aside from maybe Pangoro, basically the best thing we could see. But the opponent's going to swap into Typhlosion. We're able to swap and catch the Thunder Punch onto our Overkill, which is fine with us. We are now going to fire off the Aqua Tail straight away here, and the opponent is going to shield that up there, which is fine with us. The opponent is now going to fire off a second charge from this range. A second Thunder Punch will definitely get the KO there. So going to shield that up, fire off two Poison Stings, throwing on good timing, and going for a second Aqua Tail. Going to be no shielded, and it actually does not get the KO there. Now we are going to go for another Aqua Tail, but the opponent can commit both shields. Farm us down. We have the Fly loaded, but the charge move does not even pop up for us, which means we're now going to have to swap out there as the opponent does have back-to-back Thunder Punches. So Thunder Punch is of course resisted. They are going to swap into a second fire type, so that's certainly not ideal for the Decidueye here, but we will reach back-to-back Trailblazers. First one is going to, of course, not do much damage. Second one going to do marginally more damage in this matchup, and maybe that's put them into range where we can now finally throw the Fly. Fly does get the KO there. They come back in just to be farmed down with that Typhlosion, and now we've got a second Fly already loaded. Fly, double super effective, easily getting the one-shot up against Virizion, and despite the one-turn bringing lag nearly costing us there, we're still able to come back and take that game. But into the next battle, we can see Reggie still in the lead. This is a really awkward matchup for us. We can swap and catch the, what would have been super effective Zap Cannon onto a neutral Overquill here. However, it doesn't really help us that much. The opponent is going to swap out into a Nidoqueen here. Nidoqueen going to be on Poison Sting, I do believe, which of course it gained access to this season, which is very cool to see. We're going to go for another Aqua Tail there. They can tank that, and they are going to double resist the Poison Sting damage, so we're not going to be able to fully fast move farm them down here, which certainly isn't ideal, but we can throw on CMP, winning CMP with the Overquill and actually getting the KO there before they come in with a second Nidoking. That is a very cool team comp to see. We're going to fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail going to be shielded. We're now going to swap into Enamorus, probably predicting that the opponent only has resisted charge moves to throw with their Nidoking, so the opponent does actually do the smart thing there and just swap back into Registeel, of course, completely walling the energy. And yeah, there's just not a lot Enamorus can do in this situation. We go for a second Fly there. Second Fly does actually get them into the yellow health range, which is quite nice for us, but still really not doing that much damage there. Zap Cannon easily takes us out. We can now come in with the Decidueye here, and honestly, I would probably shield this just because I feel like the opponent's probably going to be on Sand Tomb and Earth Power on their Nidoking, which are both, of course, resisted. The opponent is going to go ahead and fire off the Sand Tomb there. They're going to be forced to throw again as we are very close to the Aqua Tail. Sand Tomb gets the KO from that range. We are now going to have to overfarm in this matchup, farming to at least back-to-back Trailblazers. The first one going to be shielded, and then we don't throw here. If the opponent only settles for a Sand Tomb, we can tank that, and now we can fire off a second Trailblaze. Of course, the debuff on defense, but they're still hitting for just one damage with the lock-ons, and as a result we're able to hang on, reach the Aura Sphere. This is already boosted, it didn't need to be. It gets the KO up against the Registeel, and we take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Clefable in the lead. So, of course, battle of the fairy types. Clefable, a lot bulkier than Enamorus. If you didn't know, Enamorus is actually a very attack-weighted Pokemon, which is why I really like it. But we are going to fire off the Fly. We're going to shield the first move here as the opponent is going to go ahead and full send the Moonblast. We're now going to go for a second Fly. This should grab the first shield from the opponent or just get the KO. And the opponent going to shield. We're then going to swap into Overquill, and the opponent responds with a Poliwrath. Now, if we had Aqua Tail and Dark Pulse, our charge moves would be fully resisted, but but having Shadow Ball there is very nice coverage up against fighting-type Pokemon, especially water and fighting types, as of course they are going to resist the Arc Tail there. They can go for an Icy Wind, but that's okay. Debuffing our attack, we can still full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does big damage there, and it's just a fast move damage race, and actually ends up being a tie simultaneous KO. I guess neither of us really wanted to throw a charge move there and allow for the opponent to just shield and then farm down to win switch advantage. We're just going to sacrifice the Enamorus, come in with the Decidueye, and this is going to be quite tricky for us. Ideally, I think we need to land a Trailblaze bait here. The opponent fires off a Brick Break, which is definitely not ideal for us. If they had double nukes, of course, debuffing their defense, we could probably just go straight Aura Sphere, but now we have to go for the Trailblaze, and we do grab that shield. We're now boosted. Aura Sphere still does not get the KO, but probably even better for us, we get the full farm down, and as a result, Decidueye winning CMP up against Clefable. Trailblaze gets the KO there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we can see Enamorus into Dragonite, so this is an amazing lead matchup for us. Unless they have like Hurricane or Hyper Beam, we just completely wall everything they can possibly throw. The opponent say swaps into Shadow for Alligator. Now, the slightly annoying thing here is since we are on Psycho Cut, Trailblaze, well, I was going to say, would not get the KO. However, the opponent shields the first one anyway, so that's absolutely fine with us. We can now fire off another Trailblaze here, and since they did full send the Ice Beam, we should now outpace them. Trailblaze number 2 grabs the final shield, and at this point, we're also going to double shield. Now, we do have to watch out for the opponent possibly trying to catch the move onto their Dragonite, but actually, just as bad for us, they swap and catch it onto a Venusaur, where it is also double resisted there, of course, due to the grass and poison typing. We then swap, trying to catch the charge move. Doesn't really make a difference here just because we're going to resist both charge moves anyways. However, 2 Frenzy Plants might actually put us into Violet farm down range. Frenzy Plant number 2 coming through, and we're actually not even messing around here. We're not going to overfarm. We are going for the Shadow Ball, making sure we get rid of it, because remember, Enamorus, really good matchup into the Dragonite. We can actually go for the fly here as the opponent catches back onto their Feraligatr, which gets the one shot anyways, and so they're just going to concede the match. So going into the next battle, Shadow Typhlosion in the lead. So this is definitely an awkward matchup for us. We are going to go ahead and fire off the fly, throwing on good timing after 7 Fairy Winds, grabbing a shield there from the opponent, and then swapping and catching what is presumably going to be a Thunder Punch onto our Overquill. Now, of course, Overquill, whilst it is a fish, it is not a water-type Pokemon, so we don't take too much damage there. They go for another Thunder Punch, that's fine with us. We can now go ahead and fire off the Arc Tail, and up against a Shadow Typhlosion, this probably does get the KO. So at this point, we're actually going to double shield here as the opponent does fire off another Thunder Punch before swapping into Jellicent, but they're unable to catch an Arquitel. We can full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does big damage there, and we're actually going to stay in. Nope, no, we're going to swap and catch the move there. Really nice play, catching a resisted Surf onto our Decidueye. But once again, since we're not on like Magical Leaf as the fast move, we've got no fast move pressure. We will not be able to farm them down. Instead, we're going to have to farm up to back-to-back Trailblazers here, and this will be enough damage to get the KO actually. But Trailblaze gonna get the KO there. We will not reach an Aura Sphere up against Typhlosion, but they actually come in with a Clefable. So Aura Sphere, the Trailblaze doesn't do too much damage there despite being boosted. We come back in with our Enamorus, but we actually give the opponent the opportunity to Incinerate, farm us down, which is certainly not ideal for us. At this point, we try to force the opponent to throw up against our Decidueye, but the opponent goes for that Incinerate farm down. They've now got the charge overloaded. They win CMP up against the Overquill, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into the next battle, another great lead for the Enamorus. The opponent's going to say swap into Galissapod, and Enamorus just core-breaking teams right now as we fire off that Fly. Fly is going to be shielded by the opponent. We're then going to swap and catch presumably an Arcojet onto our Decidueye. So very nice catch there. However, I don't know if this necessarily helps us that much because Trailblaze is just not going to do that much damage. It will be neutral because whilst yes, they are a water type, they are also part bug. So yeah, Trailblaze not going to do too much here. Trailblaze is going to be no-shielded, but the opponent going to overfarm, allow us to reach another Trailblaze. We're not going to complain. Trailblaze does get the KO there. They're going to come in with Shadow for Alligator, and things are looking very good for us, because now we can come in with the Overquill, of course, going to resist the Shadow Claw damage. I think we might have lagged there by a turn as we came in, but it shouldn't really impact this matchup too much. We're going to go for the Shadow Ball. The opponent is actually able to make the catch there, but that's fine. Shadow Ball is super effective. aggressive. We now put them into range where we can just Fairy Wind farm them down. And even an Ice Punch probably does not get the KO here. Actually, it probably would have done that. Rage Fist does quite a lot of damage. But we can now farm up to back-to-back flies, hopefully getting off both of them. But no, we actually don't. However, I think we should still be fine. We've got both shields. We're finally going to start using them. Shielding up the Hydro Cannon. They do reach a second Hydro Cannon already. But that's pretty much as far as they're going to get. Because now we can go for the Shadow Ball. And of course, from this range, Shadow Ball will easily be enough to take out for Alligator. And we're able to take that game. Into next battle, and this is literally the best thing Enamorus can see. The opponent's going to say swap into their own Enamorus. That is really cool to see. We're firing off the Fly. Fly should be grabbing a shield as wow, I can't even talk. They're very glassy Pokemon, so Fly probably puts them into farm down range. We're going to tank the Fly on our Overquill, fire off an Arquitel. And Arquitel not going to do too much damage here, but it will put them into Poison Sting, farm down range, and the opponent not having any of that, and they're just going to concede the match pretty much straight away, recognizing Pangoro up against Enamorus was the worst thing that could happen. And again, another dream lead. They then swap into Shadow Swampert, and this is also fine with us. They've got 0 fast move pressure. Of course, Enamorus does have access to Grass Knot, I believe, as a coverage move, which would have been very nice to land there. But either way, doesn't really matter. We put them into range where, well, we can't farm them down because we are on Psycho Cut, but that's okay. Trailblaze will be getting the KO there. They're going to come in with a Tentacruel, and this is fine with us. We can fire off another Trailblaze here. Trailblaze is going to do some decent damage now that we are boosted, so it does grab a shield there. We can now come in with the Overquill. We don't need to shield the first charge move. The opponent actually going to swap back into Pangoro, and yeah, I think this game is now just fully wrapped up. We can no shield. I mean, they could potentially be running like either Heavy Slam maybe, or Rock Slide as coverage moves, or maybe it's Iron Head. I can't remember. But either way, we're not going to commit to the full farm down. I think this is a mistake here, just because it would have been very nice to come out with back-to-back flies. However, we're probably recognizing we don't really need that, because now we can come in with the Overquill, unless they like Blizzard us, we should be able to tank this pretty comfortably. The Go for Skull, they do actually drop our attack, so at this point I think that I don't think it really matters what charge move we throw. If we go for Arquitel, yes, of course, we're going to need a second one to get the KO, but it doesn't really matter. We're already at back-to-back Arquitels, so this point, probably recognizing we've got back-to-back moves there, and so they no shield, and we take that game. Into the next battle, very tricky lead as we lead into Steel. It's going to completely wall the moveset of the Enamorus. We're going to be safe swapping into Overquill and firing off the Arquitel. Of course, they are going to triple resist the Poison Sting damage, whilst we are going to hit for super effective damage with the Arquitel. So yeah, not really the best matchup for us, but it's also not the worst thing ever. We can go for another Arquitel. Arquitel is going to get them into the yellow health range, so it looks like we're only going to need 2 more Arquitels to get the KO. But of course, if the opponent goes for Breaking Spot and drop our attack again, then that might be a bit of an issue. But we can fire off another Arquitel here. Arquitel is going to be shielded by the opponent, and we do reach yet another Arquitel before they fully farm us down. Arquitel is going to be no shielded this time around. Unfortunately, again, no fast move pressure from Decidueye as we do have Psycho Cut. The opponent is going to go for a Psychic Fangs there, dropping out of Fence. We are now going to go for a Trailblaze, but as I've mentioned, this is not going to be enough damage to get the KO, but it doesn't matter as the opponent going to shield anyways. So at this point, we're definitely going to shield in return. We are now going to fire off another Trailblaze here, but even boosted, I don't think this gets the KO. So Trailblaze does not take them out. We're actually going to swap Catch the Move here. I don't know if that was really necessary. Maybe we could have just stayed in, shielded again, and then gone for a full farm down there. But the opponent's going to come back in with their Steelix, dealing a lot of damage with those Thunder Fangs. Fly does get the KO, but their final Pokemon is Guzzlord. And if we'd have just kept our Enamorus for the Guzzlord, an easy victory. But of course, in hindsight, we weren't going to know that. So we're going to shield here. Aura Sphere is still going to do a lot of damage, but we have double resisted fast move pressure. Aura Sphere does not get the KO. They're able to Dragon Tail farm us down there, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into the next battle, another amazing lead for the Enamorus. I swear we're seeing like the best possible leads for this thing. Pokemon double weak to it. And as well, throwing just a brutal swing there. Very easy no shield. We can out over farm farming up to over back-to-back flies here. Fly will get the KO from that range, and they come in with Galarian Weezing. We actually go for a Dazzling Gleam. That is definitely not the right move to go for, but that's okay. Dazzling Gleam still does okay-ish damage there, but yeah, definitely should have just gone for Fly, and in this submission, they did actually mention they just misclicked there. But either way, we are going to catch a Sludge, which is very nice. They're going to come in with Golisopod. We can no-shield this, as the opponent is going to go for an X-Scissor. Both X-Scissor and Aqua Jet are going to be neutral in the situation. This is not a water type like I mentioned, so they should be going for the Aqua Jet if they're running it. But either way, it doesn't really matter too much. It's not going to do too much difference in the damage, but we go for Aqua Tail, just recognizing we can throw on CMP and win CMP there, potentially put them into farm down range for the Enamorus. They're going to come back in with that Weezing there, and remember, we've got a Pokemon weak to the Fairy typing, and of course weak to the Poison typing in the back in Decidueye, so we need to get shields down as soon as possible. But the opponent committing to a full farm down, and we just barely miss out on reaching another Fly. Remember, if we didn't go for Dazzling Gleam earlier in the battle, if we went for the correct move in Fly, we definitely could have reached another Fly there to get the KO, but now things are looking very dicey, but they do full send the play rough there, which I think is a little bit overkill. Decidueye, a fairly glassy Pokemon there. They definitely could have gotten away with just double baiting, but we can fire off the Trailblaze. Trailblaze does not get the KO. They come back in with Golisopod, but unless they've got Aerial Ace here, which maybe they do since they've gone for X's at each time. Nope, never mind. They don't have Aerial Ace. We should be fine now. And actually, gonna go for the BM just because we can. Of course, Aura Sphere is double resisted, but it gets the KO there. And we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we can see Galarian Weezing in the lead this time around. So, of course, not the best matchup for us, but we can stay in at least initially while shields are in play. Fly going to do respectable damage there. We tried to swap out, but of course, that was a CMP tie, so not able to do so. They're actually going to outpace us to this next charge move. So we're actually going to overfarm anyways, bank the Fly, and then swap, catch the charge move there as the opponent comes in with a Venusaur, and this is still a fine matchup for us. We've seen this already. Overquill can tank 2 Frenzy Plants, and of course Sludge did a lot less damage than a Frenzy Plant there. So we can definitely just no-shield in the situation. The opponent is going to go for the Frenzy Plant. We can now go for an Aqua Tail. I don't know if this is the right play, though. Aqua Tail is resisted, but it grabs the shield anyways. And we can fire off another Aqua Tail before they do go for another charge move. That doesn't quite get the KO there, but it puts them into range where one fast move from either Pokemon will take them down. So we come back in with the Enamorus. And of course, we can now overfarm considerably, farming 2 back-to-back Flies here. Fly will definitely get the KO. We grab the final shield. We're gonna win CMP with the second Fly, and of course Fly will be taking them out there. Their final Pokemon gonna be Pangoro, and that is of course a very easy win for the Enamorus, and so they just concede the match. Into the next battle, we're gonna see Enamorus into Feraligatr. So we're going to go ahead and fire off that Fly straight away. Fly is going to do quite a lot of damage in this matchup, so it does grab a shield. And likewise, we're also going to shield here as Hydro Cannon would very nearly take us out. At this point, we are going to go ahead and swap, catch the next charge move onto our Decidueye as the opponent does go ahead and fire off that Hydro Cannon once again straight away. This time, we're not going to, well, we're going to make sure the opponent does not catch a charge move. However, they bank a lot of energy, come in with Giratina, a Pokemon that resists all of our charge moves right now. So that is definitely not ideal. If you didn't know, Decidueye does also have access to, I believe, Aerial Ace and Nightshade as coverage moves, so of course if we had Nightshade here that would be quite ideal for us, but that's definitely not the case here. So we're going to swap, catch the move, catching the double resisted Dragon Claw, and we are also prepared for the opponent to swap out. Honestly, I thought they'd try and snipe with the Feraligatr there, but no, they come in with Gengar, and unfortunately they can just Shadow Claw farm us down. So we do fire off the Fly at the last second there, and we do grab that final shield. This should also just be a resisted charge move, and now we can go for a double resisted Poison Sting farm down, getting quite a lot of energy, then swapping, catching the charge move onto our Decidueye. Hydro Cannon does not get the KO, the opponent then making the catch there. Really nice plays all around right now as we fire off the Trailblaze, but I think we do have this in the bag. All we need to do is overfarm with our Overquill just a little bit here as the opponent fires off that Dragon Claw. We are now committing to the overfarm, actually going to go for an Aqua Tail. I don't know if this will KO actually. Aqua Tail does not get the KO there. Maybe we've just messed this one up. Let's see. Dragon Claw also doesn't take us out. And actually, we get the perfect farm down there. That was A really close battle, lots of ups and downs there, but Shadow Ball, oh no, it still doesn't take them out there. I thought Shadow Ball would definitely get the KO there. I thought we had that game in the bag then, but no, apparently not. That was, wow, that was a complete roller coaster of emotions. But into the next battle, that was actually a crazy game. Another amazing lead for the Enamorus. I swear we only get really good leads or really bad leads and not really anything in between. But anyways, we are going to... Actually, I guess the Feraligatr in the last battle was just neutral. But either way, we are going to see a Primarina. So I like what we did there, throwing the move first before swapping out. Guarantee a shield, and now that just guarantees Overquill has a very comfortable matchup there. They come back in with, of course, the Como-O, but they can't really throw anything other than, I guess, Boom Burst or maybe Flamethrower, but they're just not going to run either of those charge moves. Let's be realistic here. The opponent fires off the Arc Jet. We can come in with our Decidueye. Of course, Enamorus is already fairly low, but it doesn't really matter too much because we don't need that much HP to take out a Como-O. So we're going to farm up 2 back-to-back charge moves here. Hopefully, we can actually tank a move from the Galissapod and not have to use our final shield here. We're going to... Oh, no, we are going to shield at the last second. We then swap, I think, predicting the opponent would then try and snipe with the Como-O, and that backfires as they don't swap out. And now, suddenly... I'm not sure we're in a great position. The opponent can go for the charge. If Arc Jet gets the KO there, they come back in with the Como-O, and we can actually reach an Aura Sphere. I think that might have been a CMP tie there, but we get the KO. They come back in with Galissapod, and again, Decidueye winning CMP, reaching that Trailblaze, and from this range, we get the KO, and we take that game. Now going into the final battle, once again, a great lead for the Enamorus. The opponent's going to say swap into Feraligatr, and we can respond with Decidueye. So at this point, we're going to no-shield. They do full send the Ice Beam there, which is certainly not ideal for us, but we can farm up to back-to-back Trailblazes. So, of course, Trailblaze going to hit for super effective damage, and this is probably going to grab both shields from the opponent. Also, again, that looks like a CMP tie. No, never mind. I guess maybe they just lagged there. I'm not really sure. Kind of hard to tell these days. We definitely lagged there as we come in and again missing out on a fast move. And by the way, when I shoutcasted Jamie Finn's battles the other day, I was wondering like why the heck does he keep coming out of the app? Apparently that does help with the one-turn lag when you bring in a new Pokemon there. So do try that out if you are struggling with one-turn lag. Personally, I don't really ever get one-turn lag, so it's not something that I've ever considered. But either way, we go for Dazzling Gleam here. Are we going to try and catch the move? Yes, we are. We did actually bank a fly as well, which is going to be very nice for us. The opponent fires off the Surf there. They're going to come back in with the Annihilate, and we are going to full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It does big damage, but we cannot commit to a farm down. However, the opponent's also not going to be able to do that as they go for the Rage Fist. Oh, we just barely miss out on the Arcatel. We are forced to throw a Fly here. Of course, Fly will be enough damage to get the KO. And now it's just a race. Can we get there in time? Yes, we're able to do so. But does Fly get the KO? Fly takes out the Jellicent, and we're able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.